The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with angry voices. Beings from 47 different worlds sat in their floating chairs, all talking at once. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs. There were creatures that looked like giant insects and others that seemed to be made of living crystal. But they all shared one thing. They were all very angry at humanity. Ambassador Zektar slammed his 4 fists on the speaking platform. He was from the Hegemony, one of the most powerful groups in the galaxy. His species looked like massive praying mantises, but with metal parts attached to their bodies. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. "This has gone on long." "Enough," Zektar shouted. "The humans have ignored us for 3 full cycles. We told them to give up their military bases on the edge worlds. We told them to stop their illegal research. What did they do?" "Nothing." The crowd of aliens made various sounds of agreement. Some clicked their mandibles, others made low humming noises, and a few simply changed colors to show they were upset. Speaker: "Morden was the oldest being in the chamber. His people had helped create the Galactic Council thousands of years ago. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. When he spoke, everyone listened. The human response to our ultimatum was, unexpected," Morden said carefully. "When we demanded they surrender, they sent us a message. Just one word, no, then they sent a ship, 1 ship." Admiral Korath stood up from his seat. He commanded the largest fleet in known space. His species were warriors bred for battle, with thick armor-like skin and multiple eyes that could see in all directions. "They sent 1 old, broken ship against our entire armada." The alien commanders had been studying the human vessel for days now. It floated at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a piece of space junk. The ship was called the Defiance, according to their scans. It was old, maybe 50 years or more. Its hull was covered in patches where repairs had been made. Different colored metal showed where new plates had been welded over holes. Scorch marks from weapons fire covered almost every surface. "Look at this thing," Admiral Korath continued, activating a hologram that showed the human ship. "It's barely holding together. Our sensors show it has maybe 40 or 50 humans on board. 40 humans against our 3,000 ships and half. 1,000,000 crew members." The hologram rotated slowly, showing every angle of the damaged vessel. To the alien leaders, it looked like something that should be in a scrapyard, not facing the most powerful fleet ever assembled. "Maybe they're trying to surrender," suggested Counselor Rixta. Her species were known for being careful and thinking before acting. "Perhaps this old ship is all they have left to send." Or maybe, Zektar's voice grew even more harsh, "they think this is some kind of joke? Maybe they think we won't actually attack them." What the aliens didn't know was happening inside that old, patched ship. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, looking out at the massive alien fleet through the main viewing screen. She was a human woman in her 50s, with gray hair and scars on her hands from years of space battles. Her uniform was simple, dark blue with silver trim. But the look in her eyes was anything but simple. The bridge around her was small and cramped. Every surface showed signs of hard use. Some of the control panels had been repaired so many times that they were held together with metal tape. But everything worked, and the crew knew exactly what they were doing. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chun from his position at the weapons station. He was young, maybe 25, but his hands were steady as he worked the controls. "They're still trying to talk to us. Same message over and over, surrender or face the consequences." Captain Vasquez nodded but didn't look away from the alien fleet. "Any word from Earth Command?" "Yes, ma'am," replied Communications Officer Torres. She was the youngest person on the bridge, but she had been chosen for this mission for a very specific reason. "Phoenix Protocol has been approved. Full authorization. No restrictions." For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Every person there understood what those words meant. They had trained for this moment for years, but now that it was here, the weight of it was almost too much to bear. "Ma'am," Chief Engineer Martinez called from his station at the back of the bridge. He was an older man, maybe 60, with hands that were permanently stained from working with engine parts. All systems are ready. The Phoenix core is stable and waiting for your command. Captain Vasquez finally turned away from the viewing screen. She looked at each member of her crew, people she had served with for years, people she trusted with her life and the lives of every human in the galaxy. "I want everyone to understand what we're about to do," she said quietly. "In a few minutes, everything is going to change. The galaxy thinks they know what humans are capable of. They think we're weak because we try to avoid wars. They think our kindness means we can't fight." She walked to the center of the bridge where a special control panel had been installed. It was different from everything else on the ship, newer, more advanced, and covered with warning labels in several human languages. 50 years ago, the galaxy taught us a lesson, Captain Vasquez continued. They destroyed Terra Prime 2. Billion humans died because the Council decided our colony was inconvenient for their trade routes. They called it peaceful relocation, but what they really did was murder an entire world. Lieutenant Chen's hands tightened on his controls. Everyone on the ship had lost someone at Terra Prime. For some, it was family. For others, it was friends. For Captain Vasquez, it had been her daughter. "The people of Terra Prime died knowing that their sacrifice would give us time to prepare for this day," the captain said. "They died so that no human world would ever be helpless again. Today we honor their memory." Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the debate was getting more heated. Some species wanted to attack the human ship immediately. Others thought they should try talking more. A few suggested just leaving and letting the humans keep their border worlds. "This is ridiculous," Admiral Korath announced. "I have 3,000 ships out there. The humans have one broken-down cruiser that probably can't even fight back. Why are we still talking?" "Because," Speaker Morden said slowly, "something about this doesn't feel right. Humans are not stupid. They know they can't win a battle against our fleet. So why did they send this ship? Why not surrender?" "Maybe they want to die fighting?" suggested another alien commander. "Some species prefer death to defeat." "No," Morden shook his head. "I've dealt with humans before. They're survivors. They don't throw their lives away without reason. There's something we're missing." The truth was that the aliens were missing quite a lot. They knew about the human colonies on the Outer Rim. They knew about Earth and maybe a dozen other human worlds. What they didn't know was that humans had been very busy for the past 50 years. After Terra Prime, humanity had changed. They stopped trusting the galaxy's promises of peace and protection. Instead, they started preparing for war. But not the kind of war the aliens expected. Human scientists had been working on something called the Phoenix Protocol. It was based on research that had been started on Terra Prime before the planet was destroyed. The idea was simple in theory, but almost impossible to actually do: make copies of matter using quantum manipulation. "Captain," Chief Engineer Martinez called out, "we're getting some strange readings from the alien fleet. Looks like they're powering up weapons." Captain Vasquez nodded. She had expected this. The aliens had come here to destroy humanity or make them surrender. They weren't going to wait much longer. "Any final messages from the fleet?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Torres replied. "Admiral Korath is demanding we respond to their surrender. Ultimatum. He says this is our last chance." "Then I guess it's time," Captain Vasquez said. She placed her hand on the Phoenix Protocol control panel. The metal was cool under her palm, but she could feel the enormous energy contained within. The ship's special core. "All stations, prepare for Phoenix activation," she announced. "This is for Terra Prime. This is for every human child they threatened. This is to show them what we really are." In the alien fleet, sensors began detecting strange energy readings. From the human ship, the patterns were unlike anything in their databases. It wasn't weapons charging up, and it wasn't engines preparing to run away. It was something completely new. "Sir," the hegemony sensor operator called out nervously, "the human ship is doing something. Energy levels are climbing rapidly, but I can't identify the source." Admiral Korath studied the readings with growing irritation. "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, sir. The patterns don't match any known technology. It's like they're bending space itself around their ship." That's impossible, Admiral Korath snapped. Space can't be bent by anything smaller than a star. Are your sensors malfunctioning? No, sir, I've run full diagnostics. The readings are accurate. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Vasquez watched the countdown timer reach its final seconds. Around her, systems that had taken humanity decades to perfect were coming online. The Phoenix Protocol was more than just a weapon. It was humanity's answer to a galaxy that thought strength could only be measured in the size of your fleet. Phoenix core at full power, Martinez reported. All safety systems disengaged. We're committed now, Captain. Good, Vasquez said quietly. Open a channel to the alien fleet. Channel open, ma'am. Captain Vasquez looked directly into the camera that would carry her image to every ship in the alien armada. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. To the assembled fleet of the Galactic Council, she began, you asked why humanity sent only one ship. You demanded we surrender our worlds and submit to your authority. You threatened to destroy us if we refused. She paused, her finger hovering over the final control that would activate the Phoenix Protocol. You made one critical mistake in your calculations, she continued. You assume that because we want peace, we are not prepared for war. You confused our restraint with weakness. You thought our desire to protect life meant we couldn't take it. The countdown timer reached 0. You were wrong, Captain Vasquez said, and pressed the button. Space around the Defiance began to shimmer and bend. Reality itself seemed to ripple outward from the human ship in waves that made the alien sensors scream warnings they had never been programmed to give. The laws of physics, as understood by galactic science, were being rewritten before their eyes. And then, where one old patched human ship had been floating alone against impossible odds, there were suddenly 2 ships. Then 10, then 100? The miracle, or nightmare, depending on your point of view, was just beginning. The alien fleet hung in space like a massive wall of metal and energy. 3,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The commanders felt confident. After all, what could one old human ship do against such overwhelming power? Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. It was the largest warship ever built, over 5 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with military precision. They had trained for battles like this their entire lives. All ships assume attack formation, Admiral Korath commanded. His voice carried across the fleet's communication network to 3,000 captains. Prepare to demonstrate the price of defying the Council. The formation began to move. Massive battleships took the front positions, their shields glowing bright blue as they powered up. Behind them came the cruisers and destroyers, weapons charging with deadly energy. It was a sight that had made hundreds of worlds surrender without firing a single shot. But something was wrong with their sensors. Sir, called out the sensor operator, his voice shaking slightly. The human ship ... It's... I don't understand what I'm seeing. Report, Admiral Korath snapped. The energy readings from their vessel are off the charts, sir. And there's something else. Space around their ship is ... bending? Admiral Korath moved to the sensor station and looked at the displays. What he saw made no sense according to everything he knew about physics. The space around the human ship was rippling like water, creating waves that spread outward in perfect circles. That's impossible, he muttered. Nothing can bend space except gravity from massive objects like stars or black holes. Sir, whatever they're doing is getting stronger, the operator continued. The distortions are increasing in power. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Vasquez watched her instruments as the Phoenix Protocol activated. The ship around her began to hum with energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. This was technology that humanity had paid for with the blood of 2 billion people on Terra Prime. Phoenix core at maximum output, reported Chief Engineer Martinez. Quantum field generators are stable. We're ready for full deployment. All stations report ready, Captain, added Lieutenant Chun. Weapon systems are online and synchronized. Captain Vasquez nodded. She had trained for this moment for 20 years, ever since the day she watched Terra Prime die from the deck of a rescue ship. Her daughter had been down there working in one of the research labs. The aliens had called it a peaceful relocation, but what they really did was murder an entire world of innocent people. Execute Phoenix deployment, she commanded. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Dot space around the Defiance twisted and folded in ways that hurt to look at. Reality itself seemed to split apart like broken glass, each piece reflecting something slightly different. And then, impossibly, there were two ships where only one had been before. Both ships were identical. Both had the same scars and patches on their hulls. Both had the same crew members standing at the same stations. They were not copies or illusions. They were both completely real, but the doubling didn't stop there. The two ships became 4. The 4 became 8. 8 became 16. The multiplication continued until the alien fleet found themselves facing not one damaged human cruiser, but over 1,000 identical vessels. Impossible! Admiral Korath's voice cracked as he spoke. This violates every law of physics. Matter cannot be duplicated. Sir, his science officer called out, his voice filled with fear, our sensors confirm it. Every ship is completely real. They all have the same mass, the same energy signatures, the same crew. It's not an illusion. In the Galactic Council chambers, the emergency session was watching the battle through long-range sensors. The Great Hall had fallen completely silent. Beings who had lived for hundreds of years and seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations were staring at something that should not exist. Speaker Morden's pale blue skin had gone even paler. How is this possible? He whispered. No species in the galaxy has this kind of technology. The humans have been busy, said Counselor Rixta quietly. For 50 years, we thought they were weak and broken after Terra Prime. We thought destroying their colony world had taught them their place. Instead, it seems we gave them a reason to become something far more dangerous. Back at the battle, Admiral Korath was trying to maintain control of his fleet, but his commanders were panicking as they watched 1,000 human ships arrange themselves into battle formation. All ships, open fire. Admiral Korath ordered. Destroy them all. The alien fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams that could melt mountains lanced out across space. Missiles capable of destroying city blocks streaked toward the human vessels. Particle cannons that fired streams of matter at near light speed, all focused on the human fleet, but something impossible happened. The weapons passed right through the human ships without causing any damage at all. What? Admiral Korath stared at his displays in disbelief. Direct hits on multiple targets? No damage reported. Sir, his weapons officer called out, our shots are going right through them. It's like they're not really there. Captain Vasquez smiled grimly as she watched the alien weapons pass harmlessly through her fleet. This was exactly what the Phoenix Protocol was designed to do. Each copy of the Defiance existed in a slightly different phase of reality. They were all real, but they were also slightly out of sync with normal space. Conventional weapons couldn't touch them. Their turn, she said quietly. All ships, open fire. 1,000 copies of Captain Vasquez gave the same order at exactly the same moment. 1,000 human ships turned their weapons on the alien fleet. But these were not the simple energy weapons or missiles that the galaxy expected from humanity. These were weapons born from 50 years of secret research and unlimited hatred. The first weapon fired was called a reality disruptor. It didn't destroy matter. It convinced the universe that the matter had never existed in the first place. An entire alien battleship simply vanished, not blown apart or vaporized, but completely erased from existence as if it had never been built. The second weapon was a gravitational lance. It focused gravity into a beam that could crush a ship's hull into the density of a neutron star. A hegemony cruiser was hit and compressed into a sphere no bigger than a basketball, its crew never even having time to scream. The third weapon was the most horrible of all, a temporal displacement field. Ships caught in its effect aged rapidly, their metal hulls rusting and decaying in seconds while their crews turned to dust. An entire squadron of alien destroyers crumbled into space debris in the time it took to blink. Impossible weapons. Admiral Korath shouted over the chaos filling his command center. This can't be happening. But it was happening. The greatest fleet in galactic history was being systematically destroyed by technology that shouldn't exist. Ships that had never been defeated in battle were disappearing from existence or being crushed into tiny spheres of superdense matter. "Sir, we've lost over 200 ships in the first minute," reported his tactical officer. "Our weapons can't even touch them, but their weapons are... They're making our ships stop existing." Admiral Korath tried to think of a strategy, some way to fight back against an enemy that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of reality. But every plan he came up with required his weapons to actually hit their targets. "All ships retreat," he finally ordered. "Fall back to minimum safe distance." But the human fleet didn't let them retreat. The 1,000 copies of the Defiance moved with perfect coordination, cutting off escape routes and surrounding groups of alien ships. More reality disruptors fired, erasing battleships from existence. More gravitational lances crushed heavy cruisers into impossibly dense spheres. Captain Vasquez opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the alien fleet simultaneously. Her voice, multiplied by 1,000 copies of herself, spoke with the authority of humanity's long-suppressed rage. "You wanted to know why humanity sent only one ship," she said, her voice calm but filled with cold fury. "The answer is simple. One ship was all we needed." An alien destroyer tried to ram one of the human vessels, thinking that at least physical contact might work where energy weapons had failed. Instead, the alien ship passed right through the human vessel like it was made of ghost matter, then found itself trapped inside a temporal field that aged it into rust in seconds. "You see," Captain Vasquez continued as more alien ships were erased from reality, "you made a critical error in your intelligence gathering. You assumed our restraint was weakness. You mistook our desire for peace as inability to wage war." The alien fleet was in complete chaos now. Ships were fleeing in all directions, but the human vessels seemed to be everywhere at once. No matter which way the aliens turned, they found more copies of the Defiance, waiting for them with weapons that violated everything they thought they knew about the universe. "For 50 years we've been preparing for this moment," Vasquez's voice echoed across every alien communication channel. "Ever since you peacefully relocated Terra Prime and its 2 billion inhabitants. We told you then that humans don't forget. We told you we don't forgive. You chose not to listen." A group of hegemony heavy cruisers tried to form a defensive formation, linking their shields together for protection. A gravitational lance punched through their combined defenses like they were made of paper, crushing all 3 ships into a single sphere of ultra-dense metal no bigger than a house. "We spent 50 years learning everything we could about quantum physics, about the nature of reality itself," Captain Vasquez continued. "The people of Terra Prime died to give us the time we needed to develop this technology. They died knowing that someday you would threaten us again. And when you did, we would be ready." The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes, but already the alien fleet had lost over half its ships. The survivors were in full retreat, but the human vessels seemed to be able to appear anywhere they wanted, cutting off escape routes and destroying anyone who tried to fight back. Ambassador Zektar's voice crackled over the emergency communications channel, filled with fear and disbelief. "What are you? What have you become?" All 1,000 copies of Captain Vasquez answered at the same time, their voices merging into something that seemed to come from the universe itself. "We are what you created when you taught us that mercy is weakness in this galaxy." The alien fleet continued to break apart under the impossible assault. Ships that had never known defeat were being erased from existence by weapons that shouldn't work according to any known science. The greatest military force in galactic history was being destroyed by a single human ship that had somehow become 1,000 ships. And still, the human weapons continued to fire, each shot removing another piece of alien arrogance from the universe. The silence that followed the battle was more terrifying than the fighting itself. Where 3,000 alien ships had once formed the most powerful fleet in galactic history, now only scattered debris and a few hundred damaged survivors remained. The space around Kepler 442 was filled with the twisted remains of what had been mighty warships just minutes before. Admiral Korath sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed impossible things. His flagship, the Eternal Dominance, was one of the few large ships still intact, but even it had suffered damage from weapons that his science officers couldn't explain. Half his crew was dead, killed by technology that shouldn't exist. Status report, he said quietly. His voice sounded old and broken. Sir, his tactical officer replied, his hands shaking as he worked his controls. We've lost 2,007. 100 ships, most of them They were completely destroyed. Not blown apart, sir. They just stopped existing. Admiral Korath closed his eyes. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. His fleet had been the pride of the galaxy, feared by every world from the core systems to the outer rim. Now it was space junk floating in the darkness. Survivors? He asked. 312 ships, sir. Most are heavily damaged. We're getting distress calls from escape pods scattered across the system. The 1,000 copies of the Defiance had stopped firing. They hung in space around the remains of the alien fleet like hunting predators deciding whether their prey was truly dead. The sight of them was more frightening than any weapon. 1,000 identical ships that should not exist, each one capable of erasing matter from reality itself. On the bridge of the original Defiance, Captain Vasquez watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The battle had gone exactly as planned, but she took no joy in the destruction. Every alien ship that had been destroyed represented thousands of lives lost. She was a soldier, not a murderer, but sometimes the galaxy forced you to become things you never wanted to be. Captain, Lieutenant Chen called from his station, we're receiving surrender signals from what's left of their fleet. All remaining ships are powering down weapons and requesting mercy. Any word from the Galactic Council? Captain Vasquez asked. Communications Officer Torres checked her instruments. Yes, ma'am. They're requesting immediate communication with you. Emergency priority. Speaker Morden himself wants to talk. Captain Vasquez nodded. She had expected this. The Council had just watched their greatest military force get completely destroyed by a single human ship. They would be scared, confused, and desperate to understand what had just happened. Open a channel to the Council chambers, she ordered. It's time they learned what humanity has really been doing for the past 50 years. A transmission reached the Council chambers instantly, carried by quantum communication systems that allowed real-time conversation across any distance. When Captain Vasquez appeared on their screens, the Great Hall fell completely silent. Beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years found themselves staring at a human woman in a simple uniform, who had just changed everything. Honorable Council, Captain Vasquez began, her voice carrying a politeness that somehow made her words more frightening. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Corps. You asked why humanity sent only one ship. I think you have your answer now. Speaker. Morden leaned forward in his floating chair. His pale blue skin had gone almost white with shock. Captain Vasquez, what we have witnessed today, such technology should not exist. The ability to duplicate matter, to phase in and out of reality, weapons that erase things from existence, itself. How is this possible? It's possible, Captain Vasquez replied calmly, because you gave us 50 years and 2 billion reasons to make it possible. The Council chamber erupted in whispers and clicks and various alien sounds of distress. They all remembered Terra Prime, but they had convinced themselves it was a necessary sacrifice for galactic stability. Terra Prime was a research colony. Captain Vasquez continued. Every human there volunteered to help us develop what we called the Phoenix Protocol. They knew the risks. They knew they might die. But they also knew that someday the galaxy would threaten humanity again. And when that day came, we needed to be ready. Counselor Rixta, always careful with her words, spoke up. Captain, surely you understand that Terra Prime was... It was a difficult decision. The colony was in a strategic location that was needed for trade routes. You couldn't allow humans to exist in a place that was convenient for your profits. Captain Vasquez interrupted, her voice still calm but now carrying an edge of anger. So you murdered 2 billion people and called it peaceful relocation. You told the galaxy that sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. She paused, letting her words sink in. Well, today you learned about sacrifice. Your fleet was sacrificed for the greater good of teaching the galaxy that humans are not convenient victims. Ambassador Zektar, who had been silent since watching his people's ships get erased from existence, finally found his voice. What do you want from us? What are your demands? Captain Vasquez smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Our demands? That's interesting. You're the ones who came here with ultimatums. You're the ones who brought a fleet to threaten human worlds. We were perfectly happy being left alone. She gestured toward the tactical display showing the destroyed alien fleet. But since you asked, here are humanity's demands. First, immediate withdrawal of all alien military forces from human space. Second, recognition of human sovereignty over all our current territories. Third, reparations for Terra Prime. Reparations? Speaker Morden asked. What kind of reparations? 2 billion lives, Captain Vasquez said simply. You can't bring back the dead, but you can acknowledge what you did. Every species in your council will formally apologize for the destruction of Terra Prime. You will build a memorial in the galactic capital. And you will make sure every child in the galaxy learns what happens when you try to erase humanity. The aliens looked at each other nervously. These demands were not unreasonable, but they represented a complete shift in galactic power. Humanity was no longer asking for permission or begging for mercy. They were dictating terms from a position of absolute strength. And if we refuse? Admiral Korath's voice came over the communication channel from his damaged flagship. Captain Vasquez turned to look directly into the camera, her eyes cold and hard. Admiral, look around you. Look at what's left of your fleet. Now imagine what would happen if humanity decided to visit every alien world with the same message we brought here today. The threat was clear, and it was terrifying because everyone now knew that humans could back it up. But you see, Captain Vasquez continued, her voice becoming gentler, we don't want to be conquerors. We never did. All we ever wanted was to be left alone to live our lives and raise our children in peace. The Phoenix Protocol isn't a weapon of conquest, it's a weapon of defense. We'll use it to protect ourselves and our allies, but we won't use it to build an empire. Lieutenant Chun looked up from his tactical station. Captain, we're getting readings from across the system. More ships are arriving. Alien reinforcements? Captain Vasquez asked. No, ma'am. They're human ships. Looks like the entire home fleet is jumping in. Through the viewing ports of both human and alien ships, new vessels began appearing. These weren't old, patched cruisers like the Defiance. These were sleek, modern warships that looked like nothing anyone had seen before. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Captain, Torres called out, I'm receiving a transmission from the flagship Remembrance. Admiral Chunwei is requesting permission to take command of the operation. Captain Vasquez shook her head. Tell the Admiral that the Defiance will maintain command. This started as our mission and we'll finish it. More human ships continued to arrive, not dozens but hundreds. Each one looked like it had been built using technology far beyond anything the galaxy thought humanity possessed. And unlike the 1,000 copies of the Defiance, these were all different ships with different designs and capabilities. In the council chambers, the aliens watched the new arrivals with growing fear. Speaker Morden's voice was barely a whisper. How many ships do they have? More than you thought, Captain Vasquez replied. You see, Terra Prime wasn't our only research facility. For 50 years, every human world has been working on new technology. Every space station, every mining colony, every transport ship has been part of our preparation for this day. She activated a star map that showed human territory. But instead of the small cluster of worlds the aliens knew about, the map showed hundreds of systems stretching across two spiral arms of the galaxy. This is what humanity looks like today, Captain Vasquez explained. Not the small, weak species you thought you were bullying. We've been exploring, expanding, and building while you were busy congratulating yourselves on keeping us contained. The star map showed colony worlds, research stations, military bases, and industrial complexes scattered across vast regions of space. Some were in systems the aliens had never even explored. Others were hidden in places they thought were empty. Impossible, Speaker Morden breathed. Our scouts would have detected such expansion. Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see, Captain Vasquez replied. We've had 50 years to perfect stealth technology, cloaking devices, and methods of hiding entire worlds from your sensors. Every time your ships passed through what you thought was empty space, they might have been flying right past human colonies. Admiral Korath stared at the star map in disbelief. You've been lying to us for decades, pretending to be weak while building an empire. Not an empire, Captain Vasquez corrected. A defense network. Every human world is connected, every colony is protected, and every ship is equipped with Phoenix Protocol technology. We didn't build this to conquer anyone. We built it to make sure that what happened to Terra Prime never happens again. The new human ships had finished arriving and were taking positions around the alien survivors. There were over 1,000 of them now, each one representing technology that the galaxy didn't understand. But they weren't threatening the alien survivors, they were simply making sure everyone understood the new balance of power. So what happens now? Counselor Rixta asked quietly. Captain Vasquez looked at the displays showing the scattered remains of the alien fleet, the frightened faces of the council members, and the confused expressions of species who thought they ruled the galaxy. Now, she said simply, things change. The galaxy is going to learn that humanity is not a species to be pushed around, relocated, or erased for convenience. We're here to stay, and we're strong enough to make sure everyone remembers it. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the council chambers. But we're also willing to be reasonable. Withdraw your fleets, acknowledge our sovereignty, make reparations for Terra Prime, and we can discuss a new relationship based on mutual respect instead of fear. The silence that followed was heavy with the knowledge that the galaxy had just changed forever. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The news had spread to every inhabited world, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees from the destroyed alien fleet. Everywhere the same question was being asked: how had humanity hidden such power for so long? The Galactic Council chambers looked different now. Where once 47 species had ruled with absolute authority, now there was a new section built, specifically for human representatives. The humans sat quietly in their designated area, but everyone in the chamber could feel their presence like a weight pressing down on the room. Ambassador Chunwei stood at the speaking platform, looking out at the assembled aliens with calm confidence. He had been Lieutenant Chun on the bridge of the Defiance during the battle, but now he wore the formal robes of a human diplomatic representative. Behind him, holographic displays showed star charts that made many of the alien delegates uncomfortable. Honored council members, Chun began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We are here today to discuss the new realities facing our galaxy. 3 months ago, you learned that humanity is not the small, weak species you believed us to be. Today, you will learn just how much you underestimated us. Speaker Morden shifted in his floating chair. The old alien looked tired and worried. His species had helped build the Galactic Council thousands of years ago, but now he was watching everything change in ways he couldn't control. Ambassador Chun, Morden said carefully, the Council acknowledges that humanity possesses impressive technology, but surely we can find a way to work together peacefully. The galaxy has enjoyed stability for millennia under the current system. Chun smiled, but it wasn't a particularly warm smile. Stability? Is that what you call it when you destroy entire worlds for trade route convenience? When you force species to limit their population growth while your own people expand without restriction? When you create laws that somehow only apply to certain races? He activated the holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy with trade routes marked in bright lines. Let's talk about this stability you mention. Every major trade route in the galaxy passes through systems controlled by council species. Convenient, isn't it? Meanwhile, non-council worlds are forced to pay massive fees just to ship goods to their own colonies. The alien delegates looked uncomfortable as the display highlighted their economic advantages. They had always justified these arrangements as necessary for galactic order, but seeing them laid out so clearly made their unfairness obvious. But that's just economics, Chun continued. Let's talk about military matters. The display changed to show fleet deployments across the galaxy. Red markers indicated council military bases, while blue markers showed non-council worlds. The pattern was clear. Every independent world was surrounded by potential threats. 47 species control 90% of the galaxy's military forces, Chun explained. You call this peacekeeping, but it looks more like occupation to us. Any world that refuses to follow council directives suddenly finds itself facing training exercises in nearby systems. Ambassador Zektar clicked his mandibles angrily. Those exercises are necessary to maintain order. Without strong military presence, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Chaos like the kind you created when you destroyed Terra Prime. Chun asked quietly. Or the chaos when you forced the Kaleri people to abandon their homeworld because it contained minerals you wanted? What about the chaos when you relocated 3 billion Thaxians to a planet that couldn't support their biology? The chamber fell. Silent. These were all events that the Council had justified as necessary for galactic stability, but hearing them listed together made them sound like a pattern of systematic oppression. Chun gestured to his fellow human representatives. For 50 years, we've been documenting every injustice, every relocation, every time you've used fear to control independent worlds. We've been preparing not just militarily, but legally and morally for this moment. He activated another display, this one showing population statistics and resource distributions. Did you know that council species make up only 30% of the galaxy's population, but control 80% of its resources? Did you know that the average lifespan on council worlds is 40% higher than on independent worlds? These aren't coincidences. Councillor Rixta leaned forward. Ambassador, what exactly are you proposing? Surely you don't want to destroy the entire galactic order? Destroy it? Chun shook his head. No, we want to fix it. We want a galaxy where strength isn't used to oppress the weak, where trade benefits everyone, not just the powerful. We want justice, not just order. The display changed again, showing detailed plans for governmental reform. Humanity proposes a new galactic charter. Equal representation for all species, regardless of military power. Fair trade agreements that don't favor the already wealthy. Protection for independent worlds instead of threats against them. Speaker. Morden studied the proposals carefully. These changes would fundamentally alter how the galaxy has operated for thousands of years. Many worlds depend on the current system. Many worlds depend on being able to exploit others, Chun corrected. Yes, change is difficult. But the alternative is continuing a system built on fear and oppression until someone else develops the power to challenge it. And next time they might not be as reasonable as humanity? Admiral Korith's voice came through the communication system from his rebuilt flagship. After the battle, he had become surprisingly supportive of diplomatic solutions. The humans could have destroyed U.S. completely at Kepler 442. Instead, they stopped when we surrendered. That suggests they really do want peace, not conquest. Exactly, Chun agreed. We didn't come here to rule the galaxy. We came here to free it. Every species should have the right to determine their own future without fear of being relocated. For convenience. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. But let's address the question I know you're all thinking. You want to know how many ships we really have, how much territory we control, whether humanity is strong enough to enforce these changes? The chamber tensed. This was indeed what everyone wanted to know. The Battle of Kepler 442 had shown that humans possessed incredible technology, but how much of it did they have? Chun smiled and activated a new display. This one showed the true extent of human space, not the small cluster of worlds the aliens had known about, but hundreds of systems stretching across vast regions of the galaxy. This is human territory as it exists today, he announced. 437 star systems, over 600 inhabited worlds, and more than 50 billion human citizens. The aliens stared at the map in shock. They had thought humanity was a small species clinging to a few border worlds. Instead, they were looking at one of the largest civilizations in the galaxy. Impossible, whispered Speaker Morden. Our scouts would have detected such expansion. Your scouts detected what we wanted them to detect, Chun replied. Every human world is protected by stealth technology developed from Terra Prime research. Your ships have been flying past our colonies for decades without knowing they were. There, he highlighted several systems on the map. This is the Centauri Industrial Complex, 37 worlds producing everything from starships to quantum computers. This is the Vega Research Network, 18 systems dedicated to scientific advancement. This is the Outer Rim Defense Grid, 45 military bases protecting human space from external threats. The scope of human civilization was staggering. They hadn't just survived the destruction of Terra Prime, they had used it as motivation to build something far greater than the aliens had ever imagined. How? Ambassador Zektar asked. How? Did you hide all of this from us? The same way we've hidden everything else, Chun answered. By being underestimated. You thought we were weak, so you didn't look closely. You thought we were primitive, so you didn't take our technology seriously. You thought destroying one world would break our spirit, so you didn't prepare for our response. He gestured to the star map. Every world you see here was settled by refugees from Terra Prime or their descendants. Every ship in our fleet was built using technology developed by the people who died there. Every human citizen knows the story of what happened when we trusted the galaxy to protect us. The weight of realization was settling over the alien delegates. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's military power, they had completely misunderstood the nature of human civilization itself. So what happens now? Counselor Rixta asked quietly. Chun deactivated the star map and faced the assembled aliens directly. Now you have a choice. You can accept the new galactic charter and work with us to build a fairer system. Or you can refuse and discover exactly how powerful humanity has become when we're not being reasonable. The threat was clear, but it was delivered with calm. Professionalism rather than anger. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about preventing future tragedies like Terra Prime. The charter includes provisions for gradual transition, Chun continued. We understand that sudden changes can be destabilizing, but the direction is non-negotiable. The galaxy will become more just, more fair, and more free. The only question is whether that happens with your cooperation or despite your resistance. Speaker Morden looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Many of them seemed frightened, others appeared resigned, and a few looked almost relieved that someone else was finally taking responsibility for galactic affairs. How long do we have to consider your proposal? Morden asked. As long as you need, Chun replied. But understand that humanity has been patient for 50 years. We won't wait another 50 for you to decide whether justice is worth pursuing. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of decision. The old galactic order was ending, and what came next would depend on choices made in the coming days by beings who had never expected to face such a fundamental challenge to their power. Outside the council chambers, across the galaxy, billions of beings waited to learn whether the future would be shaped by fear or hope, by oppression or freedom, by the old ways or by humanity's vision of what the galaxy could become. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the galaxy looked very different from before. The old Galactic Council, Chambers had been expanded 3 times to accommodate representatives from species that had never been allowed to participate in galactic government. Where once 47 powerful species had made decisions for everyone, now over 200 worlds had voices in shaping their shared future. Ambassador Chun Wei stood at the center of the Great Chamber, but he was no longer the only human representative. Around him sat dozens of other humans, each one representing different aspects of the new galactic order. Some were diplomats, others were scientists, and a few were former military officers who had traded their weapons for law books. The memorial service was about to begin. Today marked the 50th anniversary of Terra Prime's destruction, but for the first time since that tragedy, it would be remembered properly. Every species in the galaxy had contributed to building a monument in the galactic capital, and today their representatives would formally apologize for what had been done. Speaker Morden, now much older but somehow looking more peaceful than before, activated the chamber's central display. The hologram showed the Terra Prime Memorial, a beautiful structure made from materials donated by every world in the galaxy. At its center burned an eternal flame that had been lit using fire from Terra Prime's sister world, New Terra. 50 years ago, Morden began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, the Galactic Council made a decision that will forever stain our history. We destroyed Terra Prime and murdered 2 billion innocent people. We told ourselves it was necessary for galactic stability. We convinced ourselves that some lives were worth less than others. The chamber was completely silent. Representatives from hundreds of worlds listened as the galaxy's oldest leader admitted to the greatest crime in modern history. Today we formally acknowledge what we did, Morden continued. We cannot bring back the dead, but we can promise that such a tragedy will never happen again. The new Galactic Charter makes it illegal for any government to relocate or destroy inhabited worlds for economic or political reasons. Around the chamber, alien representatives stood one by one to make their formal apologies. The hegemony delegation, led by a younger version of Ambassador Zektar, spoke of their shame at participating in the attack. The Vanguard fleet commanders apologized for following orders they should have questioned. Even species that hadn't directly participated acknowledged their guilt for remaining silent. While genocide was committed, Chun listened to each apology with mixed emotions. Part of him was satisfied to see justice finally being done, but another part of him grieved for all the people who had died before this moment could arrive. His own grandmother had been on Terra Prime, working in the agricultural research stations when the alien fleet arrived. When the formal apologies were finished, Chun stood to address the chamber. Honored representatives, the people of Terra Prime died believing that their sacrifice would lead to a better galaxy. Today, we can say that their belief was justified. He activated a display showing statistics from across the galaxy. In the past year, we have seen remarkable changes. Trade between independent worlds has increased by 400%. Military conflicts have decreased by 70%. Over 50 species have achieved full membership in the new Galactic Assembly. The numbers told a story of transformation. The old system of fear and oppression was being replaced by something based on cooperation and mutual benefit. But statistics don't tell the whole story, Chun continued. Let me share some examples of what the new galaxy looks like. The display changed to show a small world called Kethra. 6 months ago, the Kethran people were facing extinction. Their sun was dying, and they lacked the technology to relocate their population. Under the old system, they would have been ignored or exploited. Under the new charter, they received help from 23 different species. Today, 2 billion. Kethrans are safely settled on new worlds. Another image appeared, showing a massive space station. This is Freedom Station, built in the neutral zone between former enemy territories. It serves as a trading post, cultural exchange center, and refugee processing facility. It's operated jointly by 12 different species and has become a symbol of what we can accomplish when we work together. Chun smiled as he showed the next image, a group of young beings from different species working together in what was clearly a classroom. Perhaps most importantly, we now have the Galactic Education Initiative. Children from all worlds can study together, learn from each other, and build friendships that will prevent future conflicts. Speaker Morden nodded approvingly. These achievements are remarkable, Ambassador Chun, but I must ask, how has humanity adjusted to its new role in galactic affairs? Your people now have enormous influence. How do we know you won't become the oppressors yourselves? It was a fair question, and one that Chun had expected. That's exactly why we built the new system the way we did. No single species, including humanity, can control the Galactic Assembly. Every major decision requires approval from at least 60% of member worlds, and no species can represent more than 10% of the total votes. He gestured to the human delegation around him. We deliberately limited our own power because we remember what it felt like to be powerless. The goal was never to replace one empire with another, it was to make sure no empire could exist at all. Admiral Korath, now serving as the head of the new Galactic Defense Force, spoke from his position near the military section. The humans have kept their promise about defensive technology. Every member world now has access to basic Phoenix Protocol shields and early warning systems. But the advanced offensive capabilities remain restricted to the GDF and only for use against external threats. This had been one of the most difficult negotiations. Many species wanted access to humanity's reality-bending weapons, but the humans had refused to share them except under strict controls. The compromise was a defensive umbrella that protected everyone while preventing anyone from becoming too powerful. Chun activated another display, this one showing exploration data. We've also made remarkable progress in galactic exploration. The combined science fleet has discovered 47 new worlds suitable for colonization, 18 new species ready for contact, and 3 major archaeological sites that are teaching us about galactic history. The exploration program was another symbol of the new cooperation. Instead of each species exploring separately and fighting over discoveries, they now shared resources and knowledge. It was proving far more effective than the old competitive approach. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Chun said, is something less visible. For the first time in recorded galactic history, children are growing up without fear that their world might be destroyed for political convenience. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from hundreds of different species. Clicks, whistles, hums, and various other expressions of agreement. Councillor Rixta, now serving as the head of the Economic Development Committee, stood to address the Assembly. The new trade agreements have been beneficial for everyone. Even former council species have seen their economies grow by sharing technology and resources instead of hoarding them. This had been a surprise to many. The old council species had expected to lose wealth and power under the new system, but cooperation had proven more profitable than exploitation. Chun nodded toward her. Councillor Rixta raises an important point. The new galaxy isn't about taking from the strong to give to the weak. It's about making everyone stronger by working together. He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds. Some were familiar species that had been part of galactic civilization for millennia. Others were newcomers who had only recently achieved spaceflight. All of them now had equal voices in shaping their shared future. There have been challenges, of course, Chun admitted. The Outer Rim pirates tried to take advantage of the transition period. 3 species initially refused to join the new system and had to be convinced. And we're still working on standardizing laws across such diverse cultures. The pirate problem had been solved quickly once the new Galactic Defense Force demonstrated that Phoenix Protocol technology made their ships untouchable. The rebellious species had been more difficult, requiring careful diplomacy and economic incentives rather than military force. But overall, Chun continued, the galaxy is more peaceful, more prosperous, and more just than it has been in thousands of years. He activated one final display, showing a timeline that stretched from Terra Prime's destruction to the present day. 50 years ago, 2 billion people died to teach the galaxy a lesson about the value of life. Today, we can say that lesson has been learned. The memorial flame flickered on the display, representing not just the dead of Terra Prime, but also the hope that their sacrifice had ultimately created. Speaker Morden stood slowly, his advanced age making the movement difficult. Ambassador Chun, on behalf of the entire galaxy, I want to thank humanity for choosing forgiveness over revenge, justice over conquest, and hope over despair. Chun bowed respectfully. Speaker Morden, we didn't choose forgiveness because we're naturally peaceful. We chose it because we learned that revenge only creates more enemies. Terra Prime taught us that the cycle of violence must be broken somewhere, by someone. We decided that someone would be us. As the memorial service concluded, and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Chun remained behind for a few moments. He looked up at the holographic flame and thought about his grandmother, about Captain Vasquez and the crew of the Defiance, about all the people who had lived and died to make this moment possible. The galaxy had asked why humanity sent only one ship. The answer, Chun now realized, was that they had needed to prove they could show restraint even when they possessed overwhelming power. The Defiance hadn't just been a weapon, it had been a test of humanity's character. They had passed that test, and in doing so, they had given the galaxy something it had never had before: hope for a future where strength served justice instead of oppressing it. Outside the chamber, across hundreds of worlds, billions of beings were living better lives because 43 humans on an old, patched ship had chosen to fight for something greater than revenge. Terra Prime's children had finally come home to a galaxy worthy of their sacrifice.
The Great Hall of Station Prime buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in curved rows, their scales, fur, and strange skin colors creating a rainbow of life forms. But today, that rainbow felt more like storm, clouds gathering before lightning struck. Ambassador Marcus Reed sat alone in the human section. His gray suit looked plain next to the fancy robes and armor worn by other delegates. At 50 years old, Marcus had spent half his life trying to build peace between humans and aliens. Today he feared all that work was about to crumble. The Veltar delegate stood at the center podium. General Vex was 8 feet tall with blue-black skin and 4 arms. His voice boomed across the hall like thunder. "The humans lie," he declared, waving a datapad in one of his massive hands. "These so-called evidence files are fake. We would never harm innocent beings." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The evidence was not fake. 3 days ago, human scouts had found Colony 7 on the edge of space. What they discovered there still made him sick to think about. Hundreds of human families, men, women, children, working in alien mines with chains around their necks. The Veltar had been taking humans as slaves for months. "The evidence speaks for itself," Marcus said, standing up. His voice was calm but carried clearly through the hall. "We have video, recordings, medical scans, witness statements from the rescued colonists. Your people have been enslaving human families." General Vex's 4 eyes narrowed. "Even if this were true, which it is not, humans are a violent species. You spread across space like a disease. Perhaps some control is needed to protect civilized worlds." A low murmur ran through the hall. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Marcus felt cold anger building in his chest. These beings had sat in meetings with him for years, sharing meals and making jokes. Now they talked about controlling his people like dangerous animals. The Torani representative, a bird-like creature with golden feathers, fluttered her wings nervously. "Perhaps we should investigate these claims more carefully," she chirped. "There may be misunderstandings on both sides." "There is no misunderstanding," Marcus replied. He activated his own datapad and holographic images filled the air above the center of the hall. The images showed human children with hollow eyes and alien collars around their necks, women with whip marks on their backs, men who looked like walking skeletons. Several aliens looked away from the images. Others seemed bored, as if watching a weather report. The Veltar delegation laughed. "You see," General Vex said with amusement, "the humans become emotional over such small matters. This is exactly why stronger species must guide them." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. For 25 years he had believed in diplomacy, He had believed that different species could work together, learn from each other, build something better than war. But looking at these aliens now, some laughing at human suffering, others treating it like paperwork, he realized how naive he had been. Small matters? Marcus repeated quietly. Then his voice grew stronger. General Vex, you just called the enslavement of human families a small matter. Of course, the Veltar replied. What are a few hundred primitives compared to galactic stability? The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Around the hall, he saw other aliens nodding or looking, uncomfortable but saying nothing. These beings who called themselves civilized were willing to ignore slavery because it was convenient. Marcus walked to the center podium. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet hall. When he spoke, his voice was steady and cold. On behalf of the human government, I make this statement to the Galactic Council. The Veltar Empire has committed acts of war against human colonies. They have enslaved our people and treated them like animals. General Vex laughed again. And what will the weak humans do about it? File more complaints? Hold more meetings? Marcus looked directly into the alien's 4 eyes. We demand the immediate return of all human prisoners. You have 72 hours to comply. Or what? Another Veltar delegate asked, joining in the laughter. Or there will be consequences, Marcus said simply. The laughter in the hall grew louder. Even some of the neutral species chuckled at what they saw as an empty threat. Humans were known as traders and explorers, not warriors. Their military was small compared to the great alien empires. What could they possibly do? But Marcus did not laugh. He had grown up on Earth where humans remembered their history. He knew what his species was capable of when pushed too far. The aliens around him had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what real war looked like. The Torani representative stood up, her golden feathers ruffled with worry. Ambassador Reed, surely we can find a peaceful solution. Violence serves no one. Marcus turned to her with sad eyes. I have spent my entire adult life seeking peaceful solutions, Ambassador Kayla. But peace only works when all sides want it. He gestured toward the Veltar delegation. These beings just called human slavery a small matter. They laugh at our pain. There can be no peace with those who see us as animals to be controlled. 3 more neutral delegations stood up and walked out of the hall. They wanted no part of what was coming. Marcus watched them go without emotion. At least they had the honesty to leave rather than pretend they cared. General Vex stood tall and proud at his podium. The Veltar Empire does not bow to threats from inferior species. We will do as we please with the humans in our territory. If Earth wants war, we will crush them like insects. Marcus nodded slowly. Then you have chosen your path, General. He gathered his papers and data pads. When this session ends, I will transmit your response to Earth Command. The 72-hour deadline stands. As Marcus walked toward the exit, General Vex called after him. Tell your leaders not to do anything foolish, human. The galaxy has seen your little ships and small armies. You are not warriors. You are merchants and farmers playing at being soldiers. Marcus stopped at the door and looked back one final time. The hall was filled with aliens who thought they knew everything about humans. They had watched human traders and diplomats for decades. They had seen human colonies that focused on farming and mining. They thought this was all humanity had to offer. They were about to learn how wrong they were. General Vex, Marcus said, quietly, you have made one critical error in your calculations. And what is that, little human? Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You have never seen humans fight for their families. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving the aliens to their laughter and their ignorance. In 72 hours, the laughter would stop. The galaxy was about to remember why humans were the only species to completely dominate their homeworld. Admiral Kate Cross stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, staring at the message that had just arrived from Earth Command. The words glowed on her personal screen in red letters. Protocol 7 authorized. Execute immediately. Kate had served in the Human Defense Fleet for 30 years. She had fought pirates and rescued colonists. She had negotiated with alien traders and explored unknown systems. But in all those years, she had prayed she would never see these words. Protocol 7 meant total war. No limits, no mercy, no prisoners, until every human slave was freed. "Captain Blake," she said into her communication device, "report to my ready room immediately." 2 minutes later, Captain Tom Blake entered her private office. He was a young man with sharp eyes and steady hands. His destroyer Warhawk was known throughout the fleet for its speed and firepower. Kate had chosen him carefully for what was. "Coming, Admiral," Tom said, saluting. "I saw the fleet-wide alert. Are we really doing this?" Kate activated her wall screen. It showed a map of human space and the surrounding alien territories. Red dots marked known Veltar positions. Blue dots showed human colonies. Some of the blue dots were flashing. Those were the ones under alien control. "The Veltar have had 60 hours to return our people," Kate said quietly. "Instead, they sent us this." She played an audio message. General Vex's voice filled the room, full of laughter and contempt. "Stupid humans. We will take more of your colonies if you continue to make threats. Your people make excellent workers when properly trained. Perhaps we will expand our collection." Tom's face went hard. "They're treating our families like farm animals." "Worse," Kate replied. "Farm animals are valuable. They see humans as disposable tools." She turned to face him directly. "Tom, I'm giving you command of Strike Force Alpha. 12 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and the carrier Eagle's Nest. Your target is Kepler Station." Tom nodded. Kepler Station was a major Veltar military base only 3 light-years from human space. It controlled shipping routes to 6 star systems. "Orders, Admiral?" "Destroy everything. Leave nothing that can threaten human lives." Kate's voice was calm, but her eyes were cold as space itself. "The galaxy thinks we're peaceful traders who accidentally learned to build spaceships. Today we remind them what we really are." While Admiral Cross briefed her captains, Dr. Lisa Park worked in her laboratory deep inside Earth's military research station. She had spent 15 years developing weapons that she hoped would never be used. Today, she was releasing all of them. "Computer, activate all Omega Project files," she said to the artificial intelligence that controlled her lab. "Authorization, Park 77 Charlie." "Confirmed, Dr. Park. All restricted weapon systems are now available for immediate production." Lisa looked at the list that appeared on her screen. Kinetic bombardment systems that could crack planets. Electronic warfare programs that could shut down entire fleets. Biological agents designed specifically for alien physiology. And her personal favorite, nanomachines that could eat through alien armor like acid through paper. For years, other human scientists had called her paranoid for developing such terrible weapons. They said humans would never need such things in a civilized galaxy. Lisa had always replied that civilization was just a thin layer over the beast underneath. Today, the beasts were showing their teeth. "Begin immediate production of all systems," she ordered. "Priority Alpha authorization." 3 hours later, Captain Tom Blake led Strike Force Alpha out of human space. His 19 ships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright blue against the darkness. Behind them, more fleets were forming. Admiral Cross was assembling the largest human military force in history. Tom sat in his captain's chair, watching the stars stream past on his main screen. His crew worked quietly around him, checking weapons and preparing for battle. They all knew what they were going to do. The Veltar at Kepler Station had no idea what was coming. "Captain," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from Kepler Station. They're demanding to know our intentions." Tom smiled without humor. "Open a channel." The main screen flickered, showing a Veltar commander with the usual 4 arms and blue-black skin. The alien looked annoyed but not worried. "Human ships, you are entering Veltar space without permission. Turn back immediately or face the consequences." "Commander," Tom replied politely. "This is Captain Blake of the Human Defense Fleet. We're here to collect our people." The Veltar laughed. "Your people belong to us now, human. They are learning proper discipline in our work facilities. If you turn back now, we might let you visit them once a year." Tom's smile disappeared. Commander, you have 30 seconds to surrender the station and release all human prisoners. After that, we will take them by force. With 19 little ships? The alien was still laughing. We have 40 warships protecting this station, human. Your toys cannot threaten us. Tom looked at his tactical officer and nodded. 30 seconds are up, Commander. You chose your fate. The screen went dark. Around Tom's ship, 18 other human vessels suddenly spread out into attack formation. They moved like dancers, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. The Veltar fleet scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Tom had studied alien military tactics for years. Most species fought like boxers, standing face to face and trading heavy blows until one side fell down. Humans fought like wolves, circling, striking, disappearing, striking again from a different angle. All ships, weapons free. Tom ordered, "Remember, no prisoners until our people are safe." The human ships struck like lightning. Their weapons had been designed by Dr. Park's team specifically to penetrate alien shields and armor. Veltar ships that had seemed mighty and strong began exploding like firecrackers. The alien commander who had laughed at Tom managed to send one desperate message before his flagship died. "All Veltar forces, emergency alert. The humans are not what they seem. They fight like demons. Request immediate reinforcements." But it was too late for Kepler Station. In 20 minutes, 40 alien warships became space debris. The humans had lost exactly 0 ships. Tom's boarding. Teams found 67 human prisoners in the station's lower levels. They were thin and scared, with alien slave collars around their necks. When the human soldiers cut off those collars, many of the freed people cried with relief. As Tom watched his people being carried to safety, he received a message from Admiral Cross. Her face appeared on his screen, and she was smiling for the first time in days. "Well done, Captain. How are our people?" "Alive, Admiral. Hurt, but alive. The medical teams are treating them now." "Good, because you're not done yet. I'm sending you coordinates for 3 more Veltar bases. The galaxy wanted to see what humans do when pushed too far." Her smile became cold and sharp. "Let's show them," Tom saluted. "Yes, Admiral. What about prisoners from the alien crews?" Admiral Cross was quiet for a moment. "Captain, how many human children did you find in those cells?" Tom's face went hard. 12, Admiral. The youngest was only 6 years. Bold. "Then you have your answer about prisoners, Captain. Cross out." The screen went dark and Tom turned back to his crew. "Set course for the next target. We have more of our people to bring home." Behind them, Kepler Station burned in the darkness of space. Across the galaxy, the Veltar were about to learn that humans were not the peaceful merchants they had believed. They were predators who had simply been pretending to be prey. The war had begun. Commander Rick Stone crouched behind a broken wall on Colony 7, listening to the sounds of battle echoing through the mining complex. His ground assault team had landed 2 hours ago to liberate the human prisoners the Veltar had been holding. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The aliens had not just enslaved the colonists, they had been experimenting on them, testing how much work humans could do before they collapsed, how little food they needed to stay alive, how to break their spirits completely. Rick had seen war before, but nothing like this. In one building, they found human children who had been separated from their parents and forced to work in radioactive mines. In another, they discovered women who had been used as test subjects for alien diseases. The sight had made even his hardest soldiers sick with rage. "Commander," his Sergeant Mike Davis spoke quietly into his radio. "We've secured Building 12, found 18 more of our people. They're in bad shape, but they're alive." Rick nodded grimly. "Good work. How many does that make total?" 237 so far, sir, but we're still searching the lower levels." Through his binoculars, Rick watched a group of Veltar soldiers setting up defensive positions around the main administrative building. They had taken human prisoners up there and were using them as shields. The aliens thought this would stop the human assault. They were wrong. Rick activated his communication device. "Strike Team Beta, this is Stone. Do you have a clear shot on the admin building? Affirmative, Commander, came the reply from his sniper team. But there are human hostages in there. The aliens are holding them in front of the windows. Rick's jaw tightened. The Veltar were counting on human compassion to protect them. They assumed humans would not risk their own people's lives to win a battle. It was another mistake in a long list of mistakes the aliens had made about human nature. Beta team, switch to Dr. Park's new sleep gas rounds. Put everyone in that building to sleep. Aliens and humans both. Medical teams are standing by to treat our people. Roger that, Commander. Engaging now. Rick watched as his snipers fired special projectiles into the building's air system. Within minutes, every living thing inside would be unconscious. The humans could be treated and revived easily. The aliens would sleep much longer, if they woke up at all. While his teams worked to clear the remaining buildings, Rick received an urgent message from Admiral Cross. Her face appeared on his portable screen and she looked troubled. Commander Stone, we have a problem. The Veltar are sending a message to all species in the galaxy. They're claiming humans are monsters who kill prisoners and destroy civilian targets. Rick felt disgusted. Admiral, these aliens have been torturing our families for months. Now they want sympathy? I know, Commander. But some neutral species are starting to listen. The Veltar are painting themselves as victims of human aggression. Admiral Cross paused. We need to change the narrative. I want you to capture some Veltar officers alive. Make them confess what they've been doing to human prisoners. Rick looked around at the mining complex. Everywhere he could see evidence of alien cruelty. Whipping posts where humans had been beaten, cages where children had been kept like animals, medical facilities where the aliens had conducted their sick experiments. Admiral, with respect, I don't think confessions will matter. The galaxy doesn't care about human suffering. They've made that clear. Then what do you suggest, Commander? Rick's voice became cold and hard. We show them what happens when you hurt our people. We make the cost so high that no alien ever thinks about enslaving humans again. Admiral Cross was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking, Rick? I want to broadcast everything we're finding here. Not just to government leaders, but to every human colony in space. Let our people see what the Veltar did to their neighbors. Let them understand what we're really fighting for. That could cause a panic, Commander. It might make humans across the galaxy demand revenge. Rick looked at a small playground where human children had once played. Now it was filled with alien mining equipment and guard towers. Good. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that humans protect their families. All of them. Admiral Cross nodded slowly. Do it, Commander. Send everything to Earth Command. They'll distribute it through all human channels. 2 hours later, Rick's combat cameras had recorded everything they found on Colony 7. The images were brutal and heartbreaking. Human families torn apart. Children forced to work until they collapsed. Adults beaten for asking for water. Medical experiments that had left permanent scars on their victims. But the most powerful part of the broadcast was the interviews with the rescued colonists. A woman named Mary told how the aliens had taken her baby and used it to make her work harder. An old man named Joe described watching his grandson die from overwork while the Veltar laughed. A teenager named David showed the scars where aliens had tested their weapons on human skin. Within hours, the broadcast reached every human settlement in space. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Peaceful farming colonies began requesting weapons shipments. Trading stations started organizing volunteer fighter squadrons. Even human diplomats in alien capitals began sending angry messages home, demanding to join the fight. On Earth, millions of people who had never thought about military service suddenly volunteered for the fleet. Factories that had been making civilian goods switched to producing weapons and armor. Dr. Park's research stations received unlimited funding and resources. The galaxy had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for generations. The protective fury that had once driven humans to hunt dangerous predators to extinction was now focused on the aliens who had dared to harm human families. General Vex, commanding the Veltar forces from his flagship, watched the human broadcasts with growing alarm. These were not the calm, reasonable humans he had been fighting. These were the descendants of Earth's apex predators, and they were angry. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 of our outer colonies. They say the humans are offering to spare them if they release all human prisoners immediately." "Cowards," General Vex roared. "Order all colonies to fight to the death. We cannot show weakness to these animals." But it was too late. Across Veltar space, local commanders were looking at the growing human fleet and making their own decisions. Some were already releasing human prisoners and broadcasting their surrender offers. Others were abandoning their posts and fleeing toward the galactic core. The Veltar Empire, which had seemed so strong and confident just days ago, was beginning to crack like ice in the spring sun. Back on Colony 7, Commander Stone watched his medics loading the last of the rescued humans onto transport ships. Many would need months of treatment to recover from what the aliens had done to them. Some might never fully heal, but they were alive and they were free. And across the galaxy, every alien species was learning a lesson that Earth's history had taught many times before. Humans were the most dangerous predators in the universe when their families were threatened. As Rick's transport lifted off from the scarred surface of Colony 7, he looked down at the mining complex one last time. His teams had left it burning. Nothing would grow there for years. Good. Let it serve as a warning to anyone else who thought humans were easy prey. The storm was just beginning. Ambassador Kayla of the Tirani Republic sat in her private office on Station Prime, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Her golden feathers were ruffled with worry as she studied the reports streaming in from every sector. The war between humans and the Veltar was spreading faster than anyone had expected. 3 days ago, she had walked out of the Galactic Council session rather than watch the diplomatic breakdown. Now she wished she had stayed to see the warning signs. The humans had not been making empty threats. They had been giving the galaxy one last chance to do the right thing. "Ma'am," her aide, a young Tirani named Pip, entered the office with a datapad. "The latest intelligence reports from our operatives." Kayla took the pad and read quickly. What she saw made her stomach feel cold. Human fleets were moving through space like hunting packs, destroying Veltar bases with surgical precision. But it was not just their military success that worried her. It was how they fought. Other species fought wars to gain territory or resources. They would capture enemy positions and hold them. They would take prisoners to exchange later. They followed the ancient rules of civilized warfare that had kept galactic conflicts limited for thousands of years. Humans were ignoring all those rules. They did not want Veltar territory. They destroyed every base they captured and moved on to the next target. They did not take prisoners for exchange. Any Veltar soldier who had been involved in harming humans simply disappeared. They were not trying to negotiate better terms or force a favorable peace treaty. They wanted the complete destruction of everyone who had hurt their people. "Ambassador," Pip said nervously, "there's something else. We've been monitoring communications between neutral species. Many are starting to reconsider their position." Kayla was not surprised. She had been in politics long enough to recognize which way the wind was blowing. "Show me." The wall screen activated, showing a map of the galaxy. Neutral species were marked in yellow, but many of those yellow dots were starting to turn blue, indicating they were moving toward alliance with humanity. The Keth Coalition announced this morning that they are offering intelligence support to human forces, Pip reported. The Wanderer tribes have declared that any Veltar ship entering their space will be destroyed. Even the Crystal Builders are considering breaking their 1,000-year isolation to support humanity. Kayla nodded grimly. "And what about species that might support the Veltar?" Pip's feathers drooped. "The Hive Masters recalled their ambassador yesterday. The Stone Lords have closed their borders to everyone. The Shadow Fleet has gone completely silent." He paused. "Ma'am, I think they're all afraid." "Of course they are," Kayla replied. "They're finally seeing what humans really are. For decades, the galaxy had watched humans spread through space as traders and explorers. They built farming colonies and mining stations. They were polite in diplomatic meetings and fair in business deals. They seemed like just another peaceful species that had learned to travel between stars. But Kayla was older than most ambassadors. She had studied human history during their first contact period. She knew that humans were the only known species to completely dominate their homeworld. Every other intelligent race shared their planet with other creatures. Humans had either tamed or eliminated every large predator on Earth. Now the galaxy was seeing why. Her communication system chimed with an incoming message. The caller ID showed it was from Admiral Cross of the human fleet. Kayla felt her heart rate increase. Why would the human military commander want to speak with her? Admiral Cross, she said as the screen activated. This is unexpected. The human woman on the screen looked tired but determined. Behind her, Kayla could see the bridge of a massive warship. Ambassador Kayla, I understand you walked out of the council session rather than watch the breakdown. Yes, Admiral. I felt uncomfortable with how the situation was being handled. Good. That means you still have honor. Admiral Cross leaned forward. I'm calling because we need to discuss the future of this region of space. Kayla felt confused. I'm not sure I understand. The Veltar Empire is collapsing. Their outer territories are surrendering to avoid destruction. Their core worlds are preparing for siege. Within a month, they will no longer exist as a political entity. Admiral Cross's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. The question is what happens next. And you're asking the Torani Republic? I'm asking you personally, Ambassador. Your people have a choice to make. You can continue to pretend that humans are just another species that can be managed and controlled. Or you can accept the new reality and work with us to build something better. Kayla looked at her aide, who was listening with wide eyes. What kind of something better? A galaxy where species like the Veltar cannot enslave families and call it a small matter. Where strength is used to protect the innocent, not exploit them. Where diplomatic agreements actually mean something because everyone knows there are consequences for breaking them. The human admiral paused and her expression softened slightly. Ambassador, your people are not our enemies. We know the Torani have never participated in slavery or genocide. We're offering you the chance to help us create a safer galaxy for everyone. Kayla felt the weight of history pressing down on her. This was one of those moments that would be remembered for generations. And if we refuse? Then you'll be left alone as long as you don't interfere with human operations. But you'll also be on your own when the next species like the Veltar decides your people might make good slaves. After Admiral Cross ended the call, Kayla sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she turned to Pip. Send a message to the Republic Council. Tell them I recommend full alliance with humanity. Ma'am, are you sure? Some of our leaders still think this war will end in negotiations. Kayla looked at the tactical displays still showing human fleet movements. Pip, in 3 days, humans have destroyed 40 years of Veltar expansion. They're not negotiating. They're exterminating a threat to their species. She stood up and walked to the window looking out at the stars. I've studied dozens of species throughout my career. I've never seen anything like this. What do you mean? Most species fight until they get tired, then they talk. Humans fight until the threat is completely eliminated. They don't stop because they're tired or because they've won enough territory. They stop when there's no one left who can hurt their families. Pip looked frightened. That sounds extreme. It sounds like evolution, young one. For millions of years, anything that threatened human families died. Now they've brought that instinct to the stars. Kayla turned back to her aide. The galaxy spent centuries thinking humans were soft because they were willing to trade and talk. We mistook patience for weakness. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in government offices and military headquarters. Species that had ignored human warnings were suddenly paying attention. The Veltar Empire, which had seemed so powerful just a week ago, was crumbling as its own territories begged for human mercy. And in the depths of space, human fleets continued their methodical advance toward the Veltar homeworld. They moved with the patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. The galaxy was learning that humans had not changed since leaving Earth. They were still the most dangerous predators in known space. They had simply been choosing not to hunt until someone made the mistake of threatening their families. Now the hunt had begun, and it would not end until every threat was eliminated. Captain Tom Blake stood on the bridge of his destroyer Warhawk, watching the last Veltar stronghold burn in the darkness of space. The massive fortress had taken 6 hours to crack, but human persistence and superior tactics had won the day. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the final stages of the battle. It had been 18 days since the war began. 18 days since General Vex had laughed at human threats and called their enslaved families a small matter. Now the Veltar Empire was gone, its fleets destroyed, its worlds either surrendered or abandoned. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the fortress. It's General Vex." Tom felt a cold satisfaction. The alien commander who had started this war was finally ready to talk. "Put him on screen." The main display flickered, showing the interior of what looked like a damaged command center. General Vex appeared, but he was very different from the proud, laughing creature who had mocked humanity 3 weeks ago. His blue-black skin was pale and scarred. His forearms shook as he held himself upright. Behind him, Tom could see smoke and sparks from damaged equipment. "Captain Blake," the alien said, his voice hoarse and defeated. I wish to discuss surrender terms." Tom looked at the creature who had enslaved human children and felt nothing but disgust. "There are no terms, General. You chose this path when you decided our families were disposable." "Please," Vex begged, his pride finally broken. "My people, we were wrong. We will return all human prisoners. We will pay compensation. We will sign any treaty you want. All human prisoners have already been freed, General. We didn't wait for your permission." Tom's voice was as cold as the space around them. "As for treaties, we've learned that your people don't honor agreements. You enslaved humans despite the peace accords we signed." General Vex's 4 eyes widened, with desperate hope. "Then what do you want? Territory? Resources? We will give you anything." Tom was quiet for a moment, remembering the images from Colony 7. The children with slave collars, the families torn apart, the experiments performed on innocent people. "What we want, General, is for threats like you to never exist again." "I don't understand." "You will." Tom turned to his weapons officer. "Target the Fortress Command Center. Fire when ready." "No, wait," General Vex screamed. "We surrender. You cannot kill prisoners of war." Tom looked back at the screen with eyes as hard as steel. "General, you made it very clear that humans are not people in your opinion. We are just animals to be enslaved and experimented on." His voice became deadly quiet. "Animals don't take prisoners of war." The screen went dark as the Warhawk's weapons found their target. The last stronghold of the Veltar Empire became nothing but glowing debris floating in space. 3 days later, Ambassador Marcus Reed walked into the rebuilt chambers of the Galactic Council on Station Prime. The hall looked the same as before, but everything else had changed. Where once dozens of species had sat in judgment of humanity, now only a handful remained. Many had fled to distant parts of the galaxy. Others had requested formal alliance with Earth. The remaining delegates watched nervously as Marcus took his seat. Gone was the patient diplomat who had spent years trying to build bridges between species. In his place sat a representative of the galaxy's new dominant power. Ambassador Kayla of the Torani Republic stood to address the chamber. Her golden feathers were perfectly groomed, and her voice was respectful. "The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador Reed of the human government. We wish to express our sorrow for the tragic misunderstanding that led to recent conflicts." Marcus looked around the chamber. 3 weeks ago, these same beings had laughed when he warned them about consequences. They had called human slavery a small matter. Now they wanted to pretend it was all a misunderstanding. "There was no misunderstanding, Ambassador Kayla. Marcus replied calmly. The Veltar enslaved human families, and this council ignored it. Some of you even supported it. Those are facts, not misunderstandings. A delegate from the Spiral Alliance, a slug-like creature with multiple eyes, raised one of his tentacles. Ambassador Reed, surely we can move past these unfortunate events. The Veltar have been dealt with. Perhaps we can return to the peaceful cooperation we once enjoyed. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Delegate Slurm, 3 weeks ago you voted to support Veltar territorial claims in human space. You called our resistance to slavery an act of aggression. Why should we trust your cooperation now? The slug creature's eyes darted nervously. We were misled by Veltar propaganda. We did not understand the true situation. You understood. Perfectly, Marcus replied. You simply didn't care because it wasn't your people being hurt. The chamber fell silent. Everyone present knew the truth of those words. For decades, the Galactic Council had ignored injustices as long as they didn't affect the major powers. They had allowed stronger species to exploit weaker ones as long as trade continued and their own territories remained safe. Now they faced a species that would not ignore injustice. A species that would cross the galaxy to protect a single human child from harm. A species that had just destroyed an entire empire rather than allow slavery to continue. Ambassador Kayla spoke again, her voice careful and respectful. Ambassador Reed, what does humanity want from the Galactic Council? Marcus stood up and every alien in the chamber tensed. We want what we have always wanted. A galaxy where all species are treated with dignity. Where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Where diplomatic agreements actually mean something. And if some species refuse to accept this vision? Marcus looked directly at each remaining delegate. Then they will face the consequences of their choices. The galaxy has seen what happens when humans are pushed too far. I suggest you learn from the Veltar's mistake. A new delegate representing a species that had just joined the council raised her hand nervously. Ambassador Reed, how can we prove our commitment to these principles? By your actions, not your words, Marcus replied. Humanity will be watching. We have learned not to trust promises, but we will recognize genuine efforts to build a better galaxy. As the session ended, Marcus gathered his papers and prepared to leave. Ambassador Kayla approached him quietly. Marcus, may I ask you something personal? Of course. 3 weeks ago you seemed so sad when diplomacy failed. Now you seem different. Harder. Marcus looked at her with tired eyes. Kayla, I spent 25 years believing that reasonable beings could solve problems through discussion. Then I watched a room full of civilized delegates laugh at human suffering. He paused, remembering that terrible day. I learned that some problems can only be solved through strength. And now? Now humanity will provide that strength. We will protect not just our own people, but anyone who cannot protect themselves. And we will eliminate any threat to innocent lives, no matter how powerful that threat believes itself to be. As Marcus left the chamber, the remaining delegates sat in stunned silence. The galaxy had changed forever. The age of strong species exploiting weak ones was over. In its place came something new and frightening, a universe where one species had appointed itself the guardian of all others. Some would call it tyranny, others would call it justice, but everyone would call it the new reality. Humanity had spoken and the galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, human fleets continued their patrols, watching for new threats and protecting the innocent. They had learned that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice backed by overwhelming force. The dangerous war was over. The dangerous peace had begun. And across the galaxy, in quiet corners where the strong had once preyed upon the weak, a new phrase was whispered with hope and fear. The humans are watching. For some, it was a promise of protection. For others, it was a warning of consequences. For humanity, it was simply the truth.